Hope, a Bionicle short story by Lady Kopaka. I've lost count of the years, the many countless years I've spent on this dreadful place. The days are so dark and dreary, each like the one that came before. It's always so cold, and yet the air is hot, scorching hot. What am I saying? This land has always been like this. It's been so long since I've seen a clear day, if ever. For once, let the sky be filled with large white clouds and the clear blue beyond be washed in sunshine. Far too long I've hoped for cool water to bathe in, warm sunshine to bask in, and air. Oh, how I would love to breathe in cool, fresh air. But what do we get? Poison. Voya Nui is where I am. It's an island, not the paradise that might come to your mind. It's a harsh and desolate place, completely deprived of life, save my few fellow Matoran. This land burns and it freezes, a never-ending torture. Tourists used to come, but that was a time far, far ago. But perhaps it's for the best, as they wouldn't have to suffer like us. Our Turaga died many years ago, a time long ago that I have forgotten. Everything seems hopeless. I try my best to find food, water, and to help out the Matoran, but I never feel like it's actually doing any good. I wish for one day, just one, everything could go the way I want, but it never ends that way. The world is cruel and unfair, and as Pyrrhic points out sometimes, all the time really. I have wasted enough time writing. I need to go scout for water, which I'm craving terribly now. Signed, Kazi. The Komatoran placed down his pen, and stared at the table for a moment as he read it over. He sighed, still feeling aggrieved for a good thing to happen. But he shouldn't complain, as he knew it would never happen. Stretching, he slowly got up and headed out of his hut, eyes set upon the ground as he rubbed the side of his mask with thought. Kazi! Come back to Voya Nui! The voice was clearly noted, as Dalu rushed and persisted to the point. Kazi looked at her and made a grumpy puffing noise. But that's the problem. I don't want to go back to that terrible place. Well, quit complaining and make the best of it. Dalu smiled. Her eyes were bright. Kazi couldn't resist agreeing, but still, these thoughts have often drifted upon the Matoran's mind. He nodded dryly. Fine, fine. What's the situation? Nothing new. Dalu, there's always something happening. She shook her head and started rubbing her hands together. Nothing yet. Yet, Kazi replied. I'm off to find Garen. Know where he is? Probably at his hut, last time I checked, Dalu replied. I need to head off also. Heard that some Matoran were having some trouble with Rahi. They say they're acting pretty restless. Who wouldn't in this place? Kazi grinned. Oh, try to be a little more encouraging. Dalu rolled her eyes. Never mind. Bye. Kazi walked down the old road towards Garen's hut. Not many Matoran were out. Most were trying to search for food or inside resting before another hard work hour. It was a sorry sight. The place looked like some ghost town. Cold, windy, and empty. Kazi tripped over a rock and slightly stumbled a few feet. He stopped and looked at the little crooked rock and mumbled something to it. Nearing his destination, he noticed the sky was darker, a stormy dark look unlike its usual depressing clouds. Big clouds loomed over, and then a cold wind came. Yeah, it just had to get worse, Kazi thought. Or maybe a good storm would do us good. Kazi! Kazi! A voice called from behind. The Komatoran spun around to see Garen running up with an old Ta Matoran. Garen's expression was full of worry and alertness. Uh-oh. Garen has that expression again. Something bad just happened. Or soon will. What? Garen came up and took a deep breath. We have a problem. Oh, like what? A big one. Kazi stood silent on a large cliff facing out to the ocean, where the waves were hitting hard against the cliff, and in the far distance he could see something. He couldn't really describe it, but something was happening in the clouds. Well, what is that? Kazi asked in an impatient and sarcastic manner. The Matoran with Garen was well versed in weather. He could usually tell beforehand what storms were going to take place by the changes in the environment. It's not any normal storm, he pointed out, though these storms are pretty common, I think, in certain places. Usually I'd think we were too far down south to get it, but just tell me what in the world it is, Kazi snapped. Garen gave him a rude stare, but the Matoran ignored his pushy attitude. A hurricane. The wind blew harder, and this time, Kazi had to put his hand over his eyes, so little rocks and dirt wouldn't get all over him. A what? It's a massive storm, explained the Matoran. Its winds are terribly strong, blowing almost anything in its path, not including the hail sometimes, and the floods that come in the aftermath. How do you know about this? It happened long ago, though not many remember, and most alive then didn't survive it. Garen was shocked. Well, what if it passes us? That's a good thing. If it does hit us, we may be in for a lot of trouble. Better safe than sorry, Kazi said, walking further up the cliff to get a better view. He saw large clouds billowing over the sea. We need to get the Matoran to a safe area. There will be no safe place, replied the aged Matoran. It will go right over the island. Sometimes hurricanes aren't that bad. Sometimes they're fatal. Kazi sighed and turned around, looking back at the village. Then let's at least try to do the best we can. Well, a hurricane is coming. A vicious and deadly storm based off what my friend has told me. It brings me great worry, but maybe the Great Spirit will be kind. But has he ever really been? I, and the other Matoran, feel so alone. Oh, I just wish we had a great and mighty Toa to come to our aid. I bet they'd know what to do. But until then, we have our own plans to stick to. Garen said it would be wise to move the village east. As we guessed, that would be the least likely place to get hit by the storm. I was thinking of staying in some caves while it passes, but Garen said we'd risk a cave-in. So right now, I'm completely lost. I guess writing this won't help the Matoran anymore, so why do I keep wasting my time with it? Signed, Kazi. Later that day, Kazi and Garen explained the problem to the rest of the Matoran. To the degree they became worried. But they lived such hard lives, they really didn't understand how bad this could be. We're going further east, where it should be safer, Garen called out. Safer? A Matoran retorted back, snorting. There's no safe place to go. A hurricane will wipe out the entire island. Kazi grimaced. We will travel east, unless you want to die. There are caves in that direction. Hopefully that can help us out during the storm. Everyone became silent, trying to think of a comeback or struggling to decide if it was wise. Finally, Dalu stepped out of the crowd and nodded at Kazi. I'll come with you. Then she looked back at the others. We must work together, help each other. We must have unity. That is how we will survive this, and more times in the future. We need each other. Not but a few moments after Dalu's short but strong words, everyone saw the point. And finally, in everyone's eyes, nods and even a few cheers, they were ready. Kazi was no doubt happy about all of this, and then continued. Then let's hop to it, get what we need, and we'll leave as soon as possible. The Matoran gave a hopeful look, but you could tell they really didn't want to go. But with that, they ran off to prepare. The Komatoran took a deep breath and jumped off the large rock he was standing on with Garen, and headed down to see Dalu waiting. "Thanks for the help," Kazi said, smiling at Dalu. "Oh, it's no big deal. Just need to throw some strong and encouraging words around sometimes." "Surprising for you," Kazi replied teasingly. "Now, let's get ready." It was raining now, and the winds were getting stronger. It was strange how in one moment it was silent and peaceful, or as peaceful as Voinui got. The next, it was a nightmare. The clouds were as dark as night, and thunder shook the ground with surprising force. The worst of all was the wind. It started to blow down the trees and make a mess. How powerful the mighty air could be at times. The Voinui Matoran had been walking non-stop, it seemed. They were so close to their destination, but it still seemed so far away. They had to start traveling over rocky areas now, which was a good sign of nearing the caves. A little while later, they saw the large cave areas. They seemed strong enough to keep the Matoran safe, and if there was a cave-in, were there not plenty of Matoran to dig their way out? Kazi was helping some of the Matoran up the steep ledge when Pyrrhic ran up. He looked worried and kept scratching his weapons together and looking around, as if he was searching for someone. The Komatoran jumped down beside his friend and looked him in the eye. "What's the problem?"
Oh, nothing."
"Tell me." Pyrrhic took a deep breath.
"But..."
"Now!"
Okay. Goodness, keep your mask on,"
Pyrrhic replied with a wave of his hand.
"Don't get mad at me, please. I told her not to."
"Told who?"
Dalu. She wanted to see the hurricane, and she said she would meet us back if anything went wrong."
Kazi stared at him for the longest time. He couldn't blame Pyrrhic, and once Dalu was focused on something, you couldn't get her to change her mind. "I'm going after her," Kazi finally said.
"What? You can't go alone. Let me go. It was my fault for not telling anyone."
"No, I can't get anyone else hurt. Go tell Garen what I'm doing. After I leave." Pyrrhic nodded.
"Okay. Hurry. The storm is looking really bad."
Kazi ran faster than he could ever imagine. His eyes were filled with panic. Where was Dalu? She couldn't have gone too far. Was she really this insane? Thoughts ran through his mind over and over, wondering if she, or even he, could make it out of this mess. He kept going, soon coming out of a charred area in the woods, ahead on a small cliff looking out at the massive sea and the storm, stood Dalu, her eyes wide with wonder. Kazi gasped and ran over. In a second, he had grabbed her arm and was about to pull her off the cliff and back to safer land. But Dalu's fast reflexes caught the Komatoran off guard.
"Oh! Kazi, you scared me!"
She cracked in an impulsive manner, then looked at him with a weak smile.
"I was following you and I got
distracted?" Kazi snapped.
"Dalu, what in the world are you doing? We have to get back to the others." "But look at it. Can you imagine anything else being so large, mighty, and scary? How can something like that just appear out of nowhere?"
"Questions that can be thought of after it's over," Kazi replied. "Please, we need to..." Suddenly, thunder boomed, making the two Matoran fall to the ground, and a large surge of wind roared and threw them through the air. Kazi closed his eyes, then slowly uncovered them. He looked up now to see a tree bend in the wind. Then a crack could be heard. "Dalu!" Kazi yelled as loud as possible through the storm. The Matoran looked up to see the tree, and then, with a startled shriek, tried to get up in time to move out of the way as it fell towards her. But the wind was blowing too hard for her to move out of the way. With what little strength he had left, Kazi pushed himself up, grabbed her hand, and yanked her out of the way. Dalu grabbed onto him, but that was not enough. The tree fell, and the force shook the ground. The impact made the Matoran fall a few feet away from where they had been standing. Now, they were right at the edge of the large overhang. Kazi desperately tried to hold onto the ground, but the wind blew harder and something hit his face. He let go and felt himself sliding. Then, with a terrifying jolt, he started to fall at great speed toward the seemingly bottomless pit. He could faintly see the rocks and the deadly cold sea. Was this the end? Had this been his fate? He closed his eyes and waited for everything to turn black. A faded red and silver figure set the unconscious Matoran back behind a large rock not far from where they had fallen. Sooner or later, he knew Dalu would find the Komatoran, and hopefully they would find safety, but Axon would be ready to help at any time. A cool drip of water splattered against his face. Then, again it happened. Kazi weakly opened his eyes. Everything around him was blurry. Where was he? Was this the afterlife? Finally, everything became clear. He was laying in some mossy part of the woods. It was still faintly dark, but through the trees he could see light. "You're up!" a voice called out. Kazi turned to see the overjoyed expression of Dalu. She ran over and hugged him. "Oh, thank the Great Spirit you're awake!" she cried. "It's amazing how you escaped that. I thought you were dead." "I don't remember how I survived that fall," Kazi stammered with shock. "I thought you grabbed me." She shook her head. "No. But don't worry about it, okay? You're alive, and that's all that matters. Just take it as a gift from Matanui." Kazi took it by logic, which there was no way he had simply been saved by magic. Someone had saved him. "Come on," she said. "If you're up to it, I'd like to find the other Matoran and head back to the village. The hurricane is well over, besides some rain and clouds." "What time is it?" Kazi questioned as he stood up. "A little past midday, I think. It recently just stopped storming. But come on!" They met up with the rest of the Matoran and Garen halfway there. Garen was overjoyed to see the two were well, and he said that all had gone fine. "It was scary, but we lived," Garen said. "Let's just hope that doesn't happen again." After that, they continued back down towards the village, worried what had happened to it. Silence was the first thing that came to Kazi's mind when he saw the place. Rooftops were blown off, trees had fallen over on the houses, and some were beyond repair. Not only that, but the place was flooded horribly. "Well, at least we have water," Pyrrhic said quietly. "It'll dry up too fast before we have a chance to get any water," Kazi sighed. "Oh, this is hopeless." He sat down on the nearest rock and put his hands on his mask. Why did this have to happen? Why did any of this have to happen? Why couldn't we just have lived a normal life with a Turaga, watchful Toa, and lived in some wonderful place? Were we here just to be laughed at by the Great Spirit? He yelled out, looking at the sky, anger, and a mix of sadness in his eyes. Dalu walked over to him and looked at him. "But we have something special, something that will always help us get through these messes." "Oh?" Kazi said, looking at her with a weary expression. "Hope," she said. "That in the future we will be free of this curse. That tomorrow will bring more hope as we walk on, with our heads held high. Let us not be troubled or brought down by this, for that is what despair wants." She bent down and looked at him with a smile. "All the Matoran will have love and friendship, to the bitter or brighter end. There will always be good, no matter how evil the world, and there will always be light, no matter how dark it may seem." Kazi was shocked at Dalu's wise words. He never knew she could make such a wonderful speech. "Come on," she said, holding out a hand. "Let's start helping the others rebuild." The hurricane is over. It wasn't as bad as we thought, but still caused a lot of damage, and all the Matoran are rebuilding our village. Maybe even better than before. The hurricane brought lots of destruction and despair, but as Dalu said, There will always be hope shining somewhere, and it will always be lit if there are Matoran, Toa, and any others in this world that will let it shine and believe in it. Love, friendship, hope? I guess it's just another way of saying unity, duty, and destiny. Signed, Kazi.